Have you ever littered, on the streets or in the ocean, but the next day you decide to donate $20 to a charity that helps save the environment? No? Me neither. But this is the premise behind carbon offsetting. Companies that produce high quantities of carbon emissions, such as airlines or large metal producing factories, they can counteract this by finding alternative ways to reduce carbon by an equivalent amount. This can be done by planting trees, which store carbon, or helping build wind farms, which reduce the fossil fuels used in energy networks. This concept of carbon offsetting is a balancing act with no real definitive parameters. If an airline produces 10 tons of carbon emissions every year, then how many trees would they need to plant? How many wind farms would they need to invest in? These are the questions that carbon offsetting can pose, and unfortunately, there is no real answer. This poses the question, is carbon offsetting a form of greenwashing, or is this an effective tool to combat climate change? To answer this, we first have to understand what greenwashing is. You've probably seen green marketing, whether that's at your local supermarket or online with your favourite fashion brand. This is the process of selling your product by marketing it as environmentally friendly. As consumers become increasingly aware of protecting the environment, green marketing becomes a much more successful strategy. However, this creates the opportunity for companies to exploit greenwashing. This is where companies will market their product or service as environmentally friendly, but in reality, they do very little or nothing to help the environment. In order to fully answer the question of whether carbon offsetting is greenwashing, or indeed an effective tool to combat climate change, we need to look at some of the examples of companies that use carbon offsetting. Aviation is one of the most energy-intensive forms of consumption, and both passenger demand and cargo volumes are set to rise in the coming decades. This increase is likely to see the aviation sector in growing conflict with global decarbonisation goals. What makes air travel so unique is that there is no real replacement for it. Travelling is a huge part of society, and getting places via airplane is the most efficient and safest form of travel. However, as mentioned previously, the energy consumption from airplanes is astronomically high, and there is very little alternatives. This is where carbon offsetting can play a very pivotal role in the fight against climate change. Qantas are one of the leading airlines devoted to carbon offsetting. In 2019, they decided to take their offsetting to the next level by introducing a reward system for flying carbon neutral. This is completely consumer driven in the fact that you have to choose to fly carbon neutral. When you choose this option, for every extra dollar you spend, you receive 10 Qantas points. Say you spend $5 extra, this would equate to 50 Qantas points, and so forth. Qantas also matches every contribution dollar for dollar, which effectively doubles the size of the program. This program has already offset more than 3 million tonnes of carbon pollution in the last 10 years. And every contribution goes towards projects such as replanting rainforests along the Great Barrier Reef or protecting forests in Tasmania. It also goes to powering renewable energy projects such as wind farms in countries like India, Vietnam, and even the United States of America. Now, this all seems great on the surface level, but how much do we really know as the consumer? How much of an effect is this really having on the planet? This program sounds fantastic, so will more consumers decide that flying is having a positive effect on the environment? This is what the Dutch airline KLM is being sued for by environmental groups. Environmentalists claim that the company's sustainability initiatives are misleading and a direct form of greenwashing. The airline claims through its advertisements that it is creating a more sustainable future and that it's on track to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions to net zero by 2050. Their product called CO2 Zero funds reforestation projects or the purchase of biofuels. However, the campaigners claim this product does nothing to limit the damage to the environment. They also claim that flight emissions cannot be compensated for and that KLM is, quote unquote, throwing sand in our eyes with these initiatives. On one hand, we have airlines claiming that they are helping save the planet, And on the other hand, we have environmental activists claiming that they are guilty of greenwashing. So which is true? Is carbon offsetting truly a form of greenwashing? Or is it doing what the airlines are saying and indeed helping the environment? The truth, in fact, lies somewhere in the middle. The question about carbon offsetting equating to greenwashing isn't a yes or no question. Some companies will certainly do what they can to take advantage of this and mislead the consumer about their intentions. But most companies will do what they can to mitigate their negative effect on the environment. In the case of airlines, carbon offsetting does seem to be a good solution in the short term, as there are currently no real alternatives to flight travel. This isn't a long-term solution, however, as planting trees and helping restore wetlands isn't a permanent solution. Trees can be cut down, burnt in a fire. How far is your money really going to balance out the greenhouse gases you have produced? Carbon offsetting does play its role in mitigating the immediate impact on the environment, but this isn't an excuse to stop trying to find alternatives to our high fossil fuel consumption. At this current point in time, carbon offsetting can be considered an effective tool to combat carbon emissions in the short term. However, research in this field needs to yield other alternatives. Otherwise, carbon offsetting will become redundant fairly soon.